I was a maker turned company owner, and so I had to go through that journey of discovering making a company can be as exciting as making the product or service itself.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode, as well as free training on creativity, over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Drew Ungvarsky. Drew is the CEO and Chief Creative Officer of Grow, one of the top digital agencies in the world today. Under Drew's leadership, Grow has created innovative digital experiences for leading brands like Google, Adidas, Spotify, and EA Games. It's no wonder then that Drew and his company have been recognized by the New York Times, Fast Company, Fortune, and Entrepreneur magazine. It's my great pleasure to have Drew with us today. So welcome, Drew.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So share with everyone what's happening in your world just now.
What's not happening? We're doing all kinds of great work, shipping some really cool stuff for Google, Adidas, as you mentioned, Spotify. The company is growing. I mean, we just passed the 50-person mark. So that's been exciting to sort of see how the company's evolving. And we sort of have this interesting approach where we also put a lot of our time and talents to use in our community. And so we've been doing some exciting projects in the community as well. So
I guess one thing that's slightly maybe unusual in this world of advertising and marketing agencies, you are not in one of the traditional capitals of this industry. You're not in a New York or an LA or a London or Paris. First of all, describe where you are, because I know it's really central to what you're about as a business as well.
That's true, yeah. So the agency is located in Norfolk, Virginia, which is sort of smack in the middle of the East Coast. It's not a traditional market for starting this sort of thing, but the reality is it started just out of my own love for the work. I got out of college, was freelancing, designing and developing websites. Didn't feel like I needed to get a job for somebody else, and accidentally built a company around that. Could have never predicted we would have even been 5 or 10 people doing the work that we're doing, let alone the 50 plus that we've got now.
So take us back to those kind of early days of first starting the business. I mean, what did that look like? What kind of work were you doing in that stage? And I mean, what kind of work were you personally doing when you were starting to build that business?
Well, I studied computer science. I was a pretty strong programmer. I was a half decent designer, I thought I was going to school to make video games, and I discovered, this is about 15 years ago, something at the time called Flash, and Flash was all about building animated, interactive, sort of really engaging user experiences, and that was what I was looking for, and started to put that to use in sites. Weirdly, the first website I ever made in Flash said I could make a website like this for you, and sure enough, a couple of weeks later, somebody called me. The guy was in Delaware, so it was just sort of this early moment of seeing, I could work with anyone, anywhere. Did that site for him, did a site for a band that I really liked. And the day we launched the site for the band, their sort of online promotion and marketing company called and said, "We love what you just did for this band. Will you do this for all the bands that we represent?" And it just sort of started to take off from there.
So very much kind of word of mouth initially. And then take us to that time when you signed that first big client, the one where you thought this is the kind of client we want to work with. You went and built up a relationship, did a pitch, and then they worked with. Who was that client? What kind of work were you doing?
Yeah, well, early on, we were essentially, even though we had this sort of entertainment stuff, and I mentioned sort of the random businesses coming around, we had done a lot of like regional and kind of local website design development type stuff. We saw that the type of stuff we really wanted to be making, and we believed we were capable of making, was happening on a national and an international level in the advertising space. And so somehow came to figure out it was, okay, ad agencies hold these big contracts with the brands, and they are going to hire digital production partners to come in and create some of the things sort of in support of larger marketing initiatives. And so we worked hard to try to find relationships. I mean, sort of, who do we know who knows somebody at an ad agency in a position to give that kind of work. We begged, borrowed, and stole, and got an opportunity with a very small agency out of New York called Toy. And they were doing a campaign for Office Max, which is like a local or a national office supply chain here. And their promise was, we're making 20 holiday-themed websites as a gift to you, the consumer, and we only ask in return that you think of us in your holiday shopping. And so they really needed volume, and we were somebody who could do one of 20 websites for them. But for us, that was a huge shot, and we gave it everything we had. I mean, right away they offered us the ability to do one site, and we said, great, we'll do that website. Here's 3 other ideas for websites in case you want them. And they said, actually, we really like that one, so why don't you guys make that one too? And we were the first ones to finish our website of all the partners they were working with. And so they said, why don't you take a third one? And by the end of it, we ended up with 5 of them, actually. And the last one being given to us 3 days before it was due. And they said, our other partner, dropped off. And could you guys pick this up and finish it? And so I say that all as an example of, like, we were just over committed to delivering, everything we possibly could for them. And they became almost indebted to us. I mean, they called us back for so many other jobs. I can trace, most of the clients that we're working with today, 2 or 3 degrees of separation back to that one gig.
So then you started obviously building, you're taking on more people as well. More recently, you did a really interesting thing in terms of, I know you got 2 workspaces, and one of those, I believe you tweaked it slightly in terms of taking advantage of this whole kind of trend towards pop-up shops.
Yeah, so the agency is in 2 historic buildings here in downtown Norfolk, all told a little less than 9,000 square feet. And the street is really unique. It's a historic street. It's a really beautiful street. It's kind of undergoing this revitalization. And we didn't want to take away another storefront from this historic street. And so we actually sectioned off a small part of the agency. And we built it out through a series of evolutions, but essentially now it is serving by day as our agency lunchroom and gathering space. But at nights and on weekends, it hosts different creative concepts, all supporting other local culturally focused charities. And we call the space Enjoy. And so Enjoy, will be paired with any number of different creative professionals, whether they're really talented chefs or artists, filmographers and the like, who are putting on these sort of one-of-a-kind creative experiences, short run within the space, again, supporting a charity.
Fantastic. I mean, and so this is maybe for those makers out there who are, they have an idea, but the cost of going and starting up taking on premises and doing all that stuff is maybe looks a little bit too far out. So this gives them the opportunity to almost like test market a concept, test market an idea. I'm wondering, do you, because with all those folks that you have there on site as well, who are all very good at their jobs, especially with marketing and advertising, are you also kind of coming in saying, hey, you might want to just tweak this here? Have you thought about this market here, or is it more kind of hands off than that?
You mean in terms of would our employees potentially do things in that space, or do you even mean our clients?
Well, even like clients or some of those makers, local makers that you have there, they're coming in, they're putting their goods in there, and your team who's kind of around, you're in the same building as well, that kind of cross-fertilization of ideas.
Yeah, I think that happens. I mean, this space is unique. We've actually done other community initiatives that are a little bit more startup-oriented. We actually helped build a whole market that supports startup street-level businesses, retail and food service concepts. A totally different thing than the Enjoy project. Enjoy is neat because we sort of set out to say, our niche is creative professionals who want to try something different. If you're a creative professional, you get known for doing one thing, and you end up doing that a lot. And a lot of creative professionals want to try something different. And so, yeah, that sort of sense of experimentation is core to Enjoy. And then, we can't help but sort of start riffing off ideas with people when they come in and they say, hey, I want to do something and I don't know what it is, and we work that out with them.
So that's at the grassroots level. At the other extreme, I saw one of the campaigns that you did, which was for Adidas, which I thought was a really cool campaign. It was called the Here to Create Legend campaign.
Yep.
So describe what that was, because I was just checking out earlier. I thought that was a fantastic. I could see so many uses for that type of campaign.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So Adidas has been a sponsor of the Boston Marathon for 25 years. They came to us and said, we'd like to do something to commemorate that. And it would be great if that were, something good for the runners. And it would be even better if it were, focused with a sort of leading technology. And so we came to them with the idea of, we actually think, because Adidas is the sponsor of the race bibs that the runners wear, the numbers, and today those have RFID tracking in them so that you can tell where you are in the race and sort of what your split times and your total times are. We said we think we can use that technology to create a personalized video for every one of the 30,000 runners in the Boston Marathon, and that we could give that video to them within hours of them completing the race. So even more than just aggregating the data from the runners, like telling them, here's your split time and the wave that you were in and your finish time, we actually were able to pair it with camera footage and say, because we know you crossed this area at this moment in time, we know that you're in frame in this particular video, and we're actually able to cut dynamic videos for all 30,000 runners within a few hours.
So take us through that. So is that, are you using kind of machine learning kind of algorithms to kind of create that content, or is it actually just human beings that are having to sit down and do all that? Because there's a lot of videos, or how many thousands of videos?
No, it's mostly coded. So we built an engine to do this. Yeah. And it sort of took in all the data. We knew where all the camera feeds would be. We built the sort of custom algorithms that would connect all of those different things. But what was unique about the man-made part of it was sort of the eye towards creativity. And so we knew all the different shots that we wanted. We knew we needed shots of the race getting started. We knew we needed these sort of key moments when runners were notoriously passing through famous parts of the race. There's a stretch called Heartbreak Hill, which is where it's sort of like the last hard thing you have to do before you get to the home stretch of the race. So we knew we wanted those shots and what types of shots we wanted there, and we choreographed that so that it would perfectly correlate with the data that we had.
Fantastic. I can see so many of my friends that run big festivals, big music festivals. I was thinking instantly of them, if everyone there can get their own personal kind of video from there as well. Fantastic kind of campaign. I encourage people to go and check that out as well on your site. So as you were building the business, can you talk to us about a time where, as you were building Grow, you maybe worked on something, you were kind of giving it your heart and your soul, but for whatever reason it didn't quite work out like you'd hoped, and more importantly, what were the lessons that you took from that experience?
You're a entrepreneur as well. You know that's almost every day, that you're hitting these sort of setbacks of different sizes. I mean, it just doesn't go exactly as you planned. I know one of the things early on for me, though, was like just this idea of making a company. And this is somebody who was a creator. That's what I loved doing, was creating. And then all of a sudden I was sort of moving into this role of creating a company. And I kind of resented that early on. I mean, I loved coding. I loved animating and designing, and I was getting further and further away from that work. I was finding myself in more meetings and emails and spreadsheets, which is not what I had signed up for. But fortunately for me, there was a sort of a ceiling to that I felt like I was able to break through, where I could think about the company itself as the thing that I could create and the thing that I could improve, and I could find all of the little inefficiencies in the company and make them better, and I could see, here's what it is today and here's what it could be tomorrow. And while that may sound obvious to other people who maybe set out thinking, I need to make a company and it needs to look like X, That's not where I was. I was a maker turned company owner, and so I had to go through that journey of discovering making a company can be as exciting as making the product or service itself.
So that transition that you talk about there from a almost like a technician or
Yeah,
practitioner into an entrepreneur, business owner is obviously one that a lot of people go through and kind of struggle with. And some just say, I'm just not enjoying it. I'm going to pull back. I'm going to go back into my practitioner thing, or I'm going to bring in other people to do some of those things. Was there anything as you were making that transition? You talked about kind of breaking through that barrier. Was anything that you did in order to help you almost in your own head get it right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
and come to peace with this, and so you were enthused about going into work every day, and at the same time helping steer this what was now becoming, okay, maybe it wasn't a small boat anymore, maybe it was a yacht as opposed to a superliner. But what were you doing to kind of help in that process?
Yeah, it's a series of small things, but I would say probably the one recurring theme there was every time I discovered that the weight of running your own company starts to stack up on your shoulders, and it can become oppressive. When I started to discover how great it was to enable somebody else to take on significant portions, not just of the work, but of like a feeling of ownership of where is this going and how are we going to get there. To have other people take those roles not only lifted some really significant weight off of my shoulder, but that then became kind of the most inspiring thing. I mean, it was more inspiring to watch somebody else succeed in the environment that I helped create than it was to be the one creating those things in the first place.
So the company in your industry, they're kind of doing what you do and the kind of style of what you do as well. It's very agile. You're having to make, you're moving all the time. New things are happening. New trends are happening. I'm imagining helping kind of get everyone into the same kind of place mentally, and also kind of like pointing them in the right direction. A big 60-page mission statements, strategy document probably wouldn't be the best way to communicate that. What did you find in terms of being able to then communicate where you thought the business could go, what your vision was for the company?
Yeah, it's actually we went almost 14 years without articulating those things for ourselves. And that comes from a person. I mean, before I started this company, I had made a couple of websites in college. And before that, I was scooping popcorn at a movie theater. And so I never really got the opportunity to watch other people do it better than me. I was reading everything I could in books. I could never really figure out. I didn't understand the importance of defining a vision, articulating what it is about the company's culture that's unique, and long story short, we started to see some of the frictions of that when we got up in the 30 and 40 person range. I mean, we probably saw it well sooner and just didn't recognize that's what it was. In short, we went through a process. We decided to hire somebody else to help us through it. We thought we didn't know. We should go with somebody who's done this many times before, and this person through his process brought us through the idea of like defining a vision. But we didn't need a poster on the wall to put a smile on our face when we walk in the building. We wanted to understand, how would we make that real? How would we translate that into something actionable? How could we even look a year ahead or 90 days ahead and say, yeah, we're making some kind of progress towards that vision? And so for us, that was the missing piece, not just articulating the vision, not just sort of clarifying the values and sort of the core definitions of the company's culture, but to say, here are measurable ways in which we are making those things true, in which we're making progress towards those objectives. And for creators like us, that's the kind of the progress we need to see.
So the other day, I was speaking in South America, and I was chatting to one of the judges for Cannes Lions, who's also won a lot of awards there himself, as one of the great kind of advertising industry kind of legends. And we were just talking. I said, what is the challenges that you find in the business that you're building? He said, well, often when we're working with a client, we will be one of 12 different agencies that are involved in a particular campaign. And and depending on the type of other companies that are in there, they can be jostling for power, because they could think, actually, we want that bit of the business for our company, if it's a larger organization that has lots of different strands. And he said one of the challenges that he finds, almost thinking more from the client side, is how you manage all these very, very creative people who are very competitive internally with each other and towards other. I wonder, as you've been now obviously building your business, where you're often in those environments where you're maybe the digital part of a larger campaign. How do you find, how do you kind of create some semblance of joint mission when you're dealing with multiple companies that maybe don't have quite a different culture from you?
Well, for better for worse, we didn't grow up with everybody else's bad habits and cultures to learn from. So where I think there's a lot of agencies in New York and LA and other markets that sort of, that they've been born with that ethos of like, this is dog eat dog. I'm going to step on you to get to my next place in my career or for this company. We were looking at it maybe naively, but I think it ultimately turned out to our benefit of like, let's just be a great partner. Let's be a great partner to our clients. Early on, we recognized, like for our agency, we didn't want to take on everything. We wanted to take the things that we were really, really good at, and we wanted other people who were really great at their things to do those. And that's kind of the model of the agency itself. I mean, it's this sort of everybody's individually amazing, and then when we work together, we're able to achieve more than we could individually. So we approach it pretty maybe too kindly for business, which is just to say, like, we would like to be your partner, and we're happy to work with your other partners and find our particular place in your business. And increasingly, marketers are coming to recognize that this kind of one-size-fits-all work with a behemoth who is good at a lot of things but not great at any one of them isn't necessarily the most effective model. So there's a certain type of client that works for. The clients we typically work for have fairly sophisticated marketing teams. They've got in-house marketers, producers, and the like, and they're looking for specialists like us, digital specialists in particular, who can come in and work on their parts of the business.
And how are you feeling? We're seeing obviously this move now with things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, where a lot of jobs, even what you might have considered quite creative roles, creative jobs, being taken away and going towards AI. Is this something that you've grappled with either as a company or just kind of personally? You've kind of thought about, okay, what is it going to look like? What kind of work are we going to be doing, and how are we going to be interacting with these technologies, in the next 5-10 years?
I think at the risk of my like Steve Ballmer type poor future predictor, moment, if you watch what people are trying to do with machine learning and artificial intelligence to replace creativity, we're a ways away from that. What we are seeing is, there are absolutely things in automation, in localization and some of these other things that are like redundant tasks, iterative type tasks that can start to be replaced by those technologies. But our business has been all about this customized specialty creative and sort of building products and services to match a particular business need. And so for the foreseeable future, we won't be replaced by our robot counterparts.
So as we start to finish up here, I'd love to just we're kind of talking about tech. So let's talk about some tools. Are there any tools that you find particularly useful in the work that you do, like online tools or apps? Do you just help you do the work that you do?
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to go back to that spreadsheet thing and say, gosh, nobody gets excited about spreadsheets, but I love a good spreadsheet. I love watching what you can do to like take a couple of different data sets and visualize them and connect them in different ways and find what stories you see in your business. Those are things that I geek out on in like running the company, but I recognize I'm not probably connecting with a lot of folks and saying I love a good spreadsheet.
Geeking out of spreadsheets. The accountants are getting very excited at this point. so listening to this.
All my spreadsheet fans can hit me up afterwards. And
then what about, because you're doing a lot of projects that are happening at multiple times. How do you manage all these multiple projects with all the team?
Well, we've got an incredible team of producers, and they're the ones who drive this work. We've been able to build out a strategy and client engagement team as well. So, sort of strategic thinkers who drive the particular client engagements, to wherever they need to go. And that team, solves it all for us. But maybe your question about software more suited to those types of things. Like, I mean, the creatives are absolutely using all the different Adobe cloud products. I'm excited about all of these creative tools that they're using, and I wish I could mention one of our favorites by name right now, but just around prototyping things, and not just prototyping things, but actually building the first version of it. Like, it used to be a very clear divide. Like, the creatives would develop something, and the developers would, or sorry, the creators would design something, the developers would make it, and we sort of took pride in our ability to integrate those two audiences and sort of connect them together. Well, now the tools are making it so that there's a much blurrier line between those things. I mean, oftentimes our creatives are making the first version of the website or the app screens, and then the developers are sort of taking that baseline work and extending that into something really special. So yeah, it's exciting to see where those kinds of tools are taking us as well.
It's funny. It's almost like what happened in the music industry. There's a great session guitarist in LA called I don't remember what Tim's second name is, but he does all the Jason Mraz recordings as well. And so Jason would go into his studio, and they would essentially do the demo version, and it sounded great. And in the end, Tim was just saying, so often the final version is the demo version. It's got so good, even though we're just kind of playing, and when neither of us are particularly, well, he's certainly not super tech, but it just sounds good, and there's an integrity to it as well. And then they can say, well, we could add all this fancy stuff on afterwards, but maybe we don't necessarily need to do that, or we could just add some fine tweaking as well.
Definitely true.
So what about a book? If you were to recommend one book to our listeners that you think people should check out, what would that book be?
I'm really excited about a book called Traction. It sort of represents this like business system called EOS. It was the process we undertook to define the company's vision and to define its our company values, and more specifically to put those into action. So how can we make sure that everybody in the company knows where we're going and knows how to very effectively contribute to that and measure themselves against that? It's been pretty exciting. So yeah, Traction is a good one.
Great. We'll put that link here as well. And then what about a record or an album? I mean, you're in some good kind of music country where you are just now as well. So what would be that record or the album that you would recommend?
I'm actually listening on repeat right now to White Lies, which I think is from your side of the pond. So for all the great American music we've got over here, I'm definitely loving that one.
It inevitably happens. We always steal it from you and do our own version of it. And then if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to go to learn about the work of Grow and some of the campaigns that you're running just now?
Thisisgrow.com is the website. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, but thisisgrow.com is a good place to start. And
a final question for you. Let's imagine tomorrow morning you wake up and you have to start from scratch. So you have all the skills, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart?
I'd start by defining that vision a little sooner. I'd try to have a clearer sense of where I was going, just because in hindsight, if I had known that, I could have moved there that much faster. Just like I did last time, I think I would look for the most talented people I could get even close to me, and let alone on my team, to work on that project. And then get to work. Just everything about sort of achieving some great mission or some level of success is, in my mind, arm's reach. I mean, what's the farthest thing you can do that's within your arm's reach? Work on that, and then think about the next thing tomorrow.
Well, Drew, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks so much for coming on today, talking about the work that you're doing at Grow. I love what you're doing, and I wish you all the best as you go from strength to strength.
Thank you. My pleasure.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.